What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield holding it down for us in the DraftKings studio in Boston. We are brought to you by Wrangler, made for the ride of life. Save 15% on your first Wrangler.com order with promo code GOJO15. Got a great show, as always. Download, subscribe, rate, review. I don't say it for my health. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out live here Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. On the DraftKings YouTube channel, DraftKingsNetwork.com, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, and more. Jason Fitz going to join us in the second hour of the show to do an exercise, Dad, that he used to do at ESPN, and I used to take part in with him, that I always thought was pretty fun. We've got the college football playoff rankings and the committee going on right now in that sport. We're going to try and apply that logic to the NFL right now. We've had a lot of discussions this week about who the actual best team in pro football is, especially in a loaded AFC right now with some of those teams changing up top. So we're going to try and apply some of that same logic. Strength of schedule, head-to-head matchups, quality wins, who you've lost to, mix that all in a bag between best and most deserving and figure out who should make the NFL playoff in week 9 or whatever it is.
I was looking at watching a bunch of different shows yesterday and looking at different analysts ranking teams now. I saw some that had Philadelphia ranked 4th in the league, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? 4th. So all kind of different logic going on as people are ranking teams. So why not bring in the college football way of doing it to try and rank them? Because you know what? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's just the way we're going to try and do it till it all plays out on the field, which is usually what happens.
Well, and the college football way of doing it has never produced any issues or problems that people have with that system at all, or that way of going about things at all, as we will get to some other problems in the world of college football, because the Michigan thing just will not stop. Although, we've got a spicy new addition to this that I really like. But speaking of spicy, Dad, I just need to put my hand up right now. We say all the time in sports, there's that difference between are you playing hurt or are you playing injured? I am definitely playing hurt today. I have had some instances in recent years where I felt more of my age than ever before. And last night, for the first time in a while, I went out to dinner with a couple of buddies of mine to Fogo de Chao, that Brazilian steakhouse where they bring around the meat to you at the tables, and you got the green tab, and you can flip it over to the red tab.
They still have that, right? The green and red?
They
keep it coming.
They still have that.
Okay.
I'm amazed, though. The red stoplight means nothing to them now. They just kept bringing the meat out there. It was an assault of meats going on out there. They did not care because they knew deep down in places I don't talk about at parties, I wanted more meat on that wall. I needed more meat on that wall. The problem is now, Dad, I woke up this morning and my body is a furnace. We all know about the meat sweats. It is 55 degrees outside here in Southern California, and I feel like I'm dying. All of my joints hurt, so I am finding out the hard way that now as a 34-year-old, my body does not respond very well to that much red meat.
I have a question because I've never been. So obviously they bring the meat around. That's the main attraction. But like, are we talking, do you have sides going on as well? Like, what's the deal? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Everything, salad.
They're actually they have a very good salad bar there that you can tap
really
into.
do.
It just feels like you're wasting space when you know you've got this much meat on the way.
Yeah, okay.
That's exactly right. It is a beautiful salad bar, Jesse, but it's like, do I go there and then I fill up and then I can have less meat? I mean, it's a real conundrum that you're in there because it is a lovely salad bar. Yeah, the place I want to go there, Mike, and you would understand this as well with your brother-in-law, my son-in-law Ben, Sydney's husband, who is a meat-eating freak. I don't think he knows how to turn the paddle to red if he were in that place. So I would be looking forward to that. And Mike, you're just finding out another stage. Jesse, I'm sure you'll go through this as well. Take it from the 60-year-old man. I mean, there are those stages we all go through. From leaving college and all of a sudden 2 days out of college, you can't handle drinking past 9 o'clock anymore. It's amazing how quickly that happens. And then there are other milestones along the way until I'm 60, until you just go numb and just realize changes are going to happen. You just deal with it along the way. And Mike, you're just hitting another one right now because I hit them almost every day. 60 hit me. I felt pretty good and I feel pretty good, but 60 hit me with the joints. Getting the knee replaced and maybe getting the shoulder replaced and just everything finally felt like all the operations, everything finally felt like they caught up. I thought I was holding it off pretty well, but now it seems like it's here, and I'm going to have to deal with all that. So it's just stages you're hitting, and you just found another one. Don't eat 10 pounds of meat before you go to bed.
Yeah.
What a novel concept here. We will see if I can abide by those new rules. I'm not sure I can, because as I proved last night, especially when they came around with that dessert menu after all of that, I can burst through my limits. Much like Goku in the Tournament of Power, I will always find a way.
You had dessert after an endless meat buffet?
You have to have dessert.
So there's a separate stomach that exists for ice cream that I think kind of supersedes anything in that situation right there. I can always fit more of that in. The rest of that dessert probably would have been off the table, but the ice cream I've always got more room for. I can't explain it, Jesse, but that's just the science of my body.
I can explain it, Jesse. After you have just a meal, right, well, say there's no dessert, as you're leaving and going home, you get that taste that, like, I need something a little bit sweet. And then if you go home, you're going to grab something that might be at your house anyway, and, it's just something you would have. Why not take care of that at the restaurant when they have different kinds of dessert? So I'm always finding a way to stuff in the extra there to get dessert, just for the way that the taste in my mouth.
Just because you need it. Yeah, it makes sense.
Boom.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you make perfect sense, right?
Checks out.
Yeah, and that, you know what that is? That's the logic of a type 2 diabetic.
That's called boy math. Yeah, that's called boy math.
That is boy math.
Yeah.
That is legitimate boy math.
Yeah.
Now that we've done the calculus on why you're going to watch me slowly soak through this Stugatz Army shirt during the body of the show, let's get to a Thursday staple around here. We're getting ready. We're close to the NFL weekend, and that means it's time to get into 3 for Thursday. 3 things that we want to get the conversation started with heading into week 10 in the NFL. I mistakenly said week 9 before. And guys, why don't we start with this one? We talked a lot yesterday about CJ Stroud. So, Dad, yes or no? CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans are going to ride the momentum of their comeback win over Tampa Bay and upset the Cincinnati Bengals this week.
I'm going to give that a firm no on that, even though I like what Houston is doing in the long run of this and what certainly C.J. Stroud is doing. But they have a good run defense, but that's not really the worry when you're playing against Cincinnati. It's the pass, and they're in the 20s in pass defense. Houston doesn't have a great running game to control the clock. So they're not there yet. They're not there from that running standpoint. They're not there yet from the defensive standpoint. They'll get there, right? You got a couple of nice young receivers and Nico Collins and Tank Dell. So you're building a lot. I like what they're building in Houston, but I don't think they can get past now. Cincinnati is hitting its stride. Now, I know Chase has the back. That was one of those hard landings, man, that you see in basketball where you just hit nothing but flat on your back on that hardwood court. Looks like it's just miserable. He did that on the football field, so he's iffy on that one. But I just think that offense is hitting their stride really well right now, and I don't see a hiccup at this point. Again, I like Houston. I like what they're doing. They're going in the right direction. But I think they're catching Cincinnati now at a time when they're hitting their stride, certainly offensively, defensively, see them playing well as well. So while Houston is getting better and is going to get better and being a really good story this year, I don't think it happens this game.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, obviously, the Cincinnati Bengals are ascending to the point where when we get to that NFL playoff conversation with Fitz, they're going to be in the conversation for one of the top, if not the top team in football based on how they're playing right now. We understand the record not indicative because of the first quarter of their season, but just off how they're playing right now, the eye test portion of things, they're winning a lot of that because of Joe Burrow, because of Lou Anarumo and the defense and how they're able to tailor these bespoke game plans every week as well as anybody in the NFL. The one thing I'll push back on, Dad, is Houston. I guess I understand that eventually being able to supplement with a run game is going to help, but they've won plenty of games without it. Like, C.J. Stroud has been that good without the benefit of any run game there. And remember, at the beginning of the season, they were dealing with injury up front of their offensive line. Tyus Howard, Laramie Tunsil, both missed time in the early portion of the season, and they were able to overcome a lot of that. And so I think what we've seen of that offense, they could get by. The number is interesting for them. They're about a touchdown underdog, I believe, in this game, favored by 7 points points as of Wednesday afternoon. So that might be interesting, but no, I'm with you. I think Joe Burrow and the Bengals keep this going. I saw this stat from Mina Kimes that's kind of indicative of where Joe Burrow is now and why this team is doing so much better. Because Joe Burrow being able to create for them outside of the body of the play, we talk about this with the great quarterbacks all the time, is huge. Mina tweeted this yesterday. In the first month of the season, Joe Burrow's completion percentage over expectation on throws that were over 2.5 seconds. So 2.5 seconds, always kind of that line of demarcation of, oh, you're getting the ball out on time, things are going pretty well. His completion percentage over expectation on those throws was 33rd in the NFL. It was minus 7.4%. Since then, he is first in the NFL with 15% over completion percentage expectation. So he's been great. Once it breaks down, once he breaks outside of the pockets. I don't know how many times anecdotally last game, Dad, we saw Joe Burrow break the pocket, roll right, and hit T. Higgins down the field along the sideline. That's always where he's at his best. That's where the magic of Joe Burrow is, and it's reflected in the stat there. Yeah.
No, listen, I'm with you. So we both said no on this one, right? So we're both going with Cincinnati.
All right, so we agree there. Jesse, let's move on to our next question here. And this one pertains to the quarterback change that's now been made official in Tennessee.
Yeah, that's right. Titans head coach Mike Vrabel making it official Tuesday, announcing Will Levis is going to be the team's starting quarterback moving forward. Now, according to Levis, Ryan Tannehill has taken a step back, allowed Levis to really take control of this offense in practice and stuff. But Tannehill did get candid with the media earlier in the week, saying he took this news pretty hard.
But it's hard. Never been in this situation before, so, it hits hard. Never a situation that anyone wants to be in. But it's the situation I'm in, so got to walk through it. I want to handle the situation with class, right? It's not a fun situation to be in, but I want to be a pro and handle it with class and, still be a guy that people can look to. So, not an ideal situation, but, I want to try to handle it well.
Okay, so yes or no, Will Levis is going to reward Mike Vrabel's confidence in him by keeping the Titans in the AFC South race. Also, how do we feel about, Tannehill's comments? Obviously, he's human, right? Come on.
Yes. Yeah, listen, we have all been trying to replace Tannehill as the quarterback of the Tennessee Titans for the last 3 years, haven't we?
Yeah.
This goes all the way back when he was picked, number 7 by the Miami Dolphins, and everybody was like, oh my God, how does this guy go number 7? And he just keeps plotting along, and we kept saying that's what's holding Tennessee back. They have a great running game. Vrabel always has a great defense. They don't have that passing attack that can get him past a certain point in the playoffs. So we've been trying, it's kind of like with Dallas, people in Dallas trying to replace Romo all the time. And it's always like, well, what are you going to? What are you going to? You tried Malik Willis. It didn't happen when in the short time that he had as well. And then Will Levis comes in and lights it up. So he's all of a sudden, hey, do we have a guy now that can throw the ball that we can say, hey, we have a passing game to go along with King Henry in the running game. So all that being said, I'm going to say no to this one as well, Mike. They're sitting there right now 3 games behind Jacksonville. I know, Jack, and we're going to talk about Jacksonville as San Francisco coming up. But I certainly like what Levis is doing, and you do have Derrick Henry to help with the rushing attack, which will help Levis. Let's be honest, though, at this point, that defense for Tennessee that we always say is a tough defense isn't what it's been just yet. Not saying they can't get there at some point this year, but it hasn't been kind of that, oh, that's a Mike Vrabel defense. You know what they're going to do and dominate you. I think it's been a little more inconsistent this year, and that's something that certainly could help Will Levis. Because when I immediately first saw this question, I immediately thought, well, yes, because of the division. That it's not a great division.
Sure.
But Jacksonville already 3 games ahead of them. So I just don't think that they're going to stay, up, have a chance at this division title.
I also don't think that's the goal right now once you've turned the reins over to Will Levis.
Yeah, I agree.
Not the expectation anymore for how you're doing this. I think a lot of people can sort of take a page when it comes to grooming your starting quarterback as a rookie out of what Greg Popovich has sounded like talking about in the NBA with Victor Wembanyama. There's a very long-term approach to what you're building there because, Dad, they're also trying to reckon with, hey, is Traylon Burks, going to be available going forward? Scary moment for him in the injury in the Pittsburgh Steelers game. One of your receiving weapons in that offense. We know the DeAndre Hopkins connection lit up in that first game for Will Levis, but it's not always going to be that easy, and that's still a team we know has limitations on the other parts of that offense, let alone with breaking in a rookie. So, no, I'd agree. I don't think he rewards it in that way, but I don't think that's the measure of it going forward. The Tannehill comments were interesting in that it sounded like he was trying to convince himself that he was going to handle it that way. I saw a lot of people recirculating the quotes from Ryan Tannehill from when Malik Willis got drafted there that said it was not my job to mentor him. I remember those going viral at the time. And, Dad, I think people made a big deal about that because it's the quarterback spot where that's just the game. Like, not every veteran is going to be one who's inclined to feel like they want to mentor the guy coming up under them. A lot of guys have that attitude. I was fortunate when I was a young player trying to break into the league to have veterans that were willing to put an arm around me, but this is people trying to feed their family week in and week out. So I don't begrudge guys who say it's not my responsibility to do that. My responsibility is to ball for us.
But boy, when you get someone that does help you, though, I was a 10th rounder for the Houston Oilers, and Mike Stendrud was the starting nose tackle then, and he ended up losing his job. But he saw it coming during camp. But it was incredible to be so helpful the way he was in meetings and on the field. So it's really cool when that happens. And you're right, it's not owed. If you want to learn from somebody by watching them, and I think it sounds harsh sometimes. It's not my job to mentor. But what you're really, really saying is, listen, if you want to learn from me, watch me, right? Watch me. And that's what I did.
Exactly.
That was my dad. It was my dad's line to me and my line to you guys. Keep your mouth shut and your ears and your eyes open. Learn from the people who have made it already and are there. And that's what I did. But I also had a guy who was so great in helping along the way.
Shout out to Ramon Foster, Steelers offensive guard, was the same guy for me. I didn't report it as well, but, that's a story for another day. Dad, let's get to one more question here. Yes or no, after this week, the Seattle Seahawks will be on top of the NFC West right now. This is obviously twofold. The 49ers have lost 3 straight. Seattle hosts the Washington Commanders after getting their asses whooped by the Ravens. How do we feel about this?
Yes, no, maybe. Can that be an answer? No. Listen, overall, I know.
Answer.
I think San Francisco's the better team, even though they've lost 3 straight. Seattle, we know, surprised a lot of us last year by making it to the playoffs. You love what you see out of the receivers with Lockett and Smith and Jigba and Metcalf, who they have are their 3 leading receivers. Now, Geno Smith, 9 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. That certainly has not been as good as that breakout year he had last year. I do like Walker at the running back position. Again, the defense I worry about at times for them. But here's the thing. They're money at home. And they're taking on Washington, who's flying cross-country to get there. So I like them in this win. And then San Francisco is going all the way to Jacksonville. But San Fran, you got to believe, Mike, at some point is going to start making up for the 3 losses in a row and just how they've been playing. Is it going to be this week? If you hold me to this one, I think that the possibility if one loses and one doesn't, I think they both could win this, but it would be San Fran would lose in Jacksonville and Seattle would win in Seattle. So push comes to shove, I would probably lean toward after this week Seattle could be in first place.
Let me show you how to do this one. No, the Seattle Seahawks will not be on top of the NFC West after this week. The 49ers will remain on top of the NFC West because I think both teams are going to get a win here. Seattle, very interesting in that matchup.
So they're tied then.
The trade reaction. Yeah, they're tied on top there, which means, but right now the 49ers sit technically on top. When you pull up the little standing things, the 49ers are listed on top right now, even though they're tied. And so for Seattle to be on top of the NFC West, they would need to win and the 49ers would need to lose, would they not?
I went by the wins and such, not by the tiebreakers. Okay, whatever, smart boy.
The question is basically, do you think the 49ers are going to win or lose? Do you think the Seahawks are going to win or lose? I think both win. I don't think anything changes. Boom, roasted. Maybe.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Let's get an update on As the Stallion Turns, okay? AKA our very own college football soap opera drama. So we have this coming out, our most recent update here. Dan Murphy on Twitter confirmed with a source tonight that Michigan has filed a 10-page response to the Big Ten focused on due process and laying the groundwork for a potential lawsuit if the conference punishes the football program. Guys, I feel like this gets more convoluted every day. Every time we get an update, there's another lawsuit. Somebody's coming out of the woodwork. Connor Stallions is becoming more unbelievable by the day. What's our take on this latest development?
Our take on this latest development is lawyers are about to get paid right now. We've reached the billable hours portion of the proceedings right now. I did appreciate Spicy Michigan, because in the letter they sent to the Big Ten, Dad, Michigan offered this reminder to Tony Petitti, the new Big Ten commissioner, and the rest of the office there. They said in the letter, quote, "The conference should act cautiously when setting precedent, given the reality that in-person scouting, collusion among opponents, and other questionable practices may well be far more prevalent than believed." They basically said you're about to F around and find out if you're not real careful here.
Well, I mean, anybody who has played and or coached has commented on this, and we have all said, and we are all correct, this happens all the time, sign stealing. But there are things you can do that are legal and things where you cross the line and are then against the rules that are written. And when that happens and you get caught, you have to pay the price. So I'm done saying everybody does it because everybody does it. Everybody does it. They try and find a way, but there are legal ways to steal. Is it honor amongst thieves? However you want to say it, and then one school, or schools passing it to another school that's going to play a school, so you have the signals. I don't know where that falls. Is that going to fall in the sportsmanship
that's the
thing
Purdue,
down the road?
by the way, for anyone trying to get the dad reference there. Right. That's the Purdue Boilermaker reference in this, that apparently they have been accused of colluding with other schools to steal Michigan's signs because no one's answered.
So what are you going to do with that? I mean, that is nothing more than a slap on the wrist and don't do it again, if anything. So if you want to stop that. So I continue to say this goes on all the time, and it's in a legal way, except the way Michigan did it. So we continue on. So, and that is the one way. So should other schools be careful of what they bring up, because they're stealing signs as well. But again, they're doing it without breaking the written rule that has been written about this, like Michigan is. So, but you're right, Mike. This is now going to be the lawyers, because now you're getting, if Tony Petitti, the new Big Ten commissioner, if he does anything disciplinary action, look for Michigan to file an injunction or a restraining order. If he does anything over 2-game suspension, it is declared a major disciplinary action. Then it has to go to the, let me get this right. It needs to get approval from the Joint Group Executive Committee if it goes over 2 games. So they can either uphold it or lessen it. They can't give more games. So this is now, as you said, going to hit the courts. Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to ask you a question, because you're right. We've reached legal mumbo jumbo phase where everyone's eyes glaze over. It's become an event that's been very fun. And I want to say to this, Michigan fans, you shouldn't care about this, right?
No.
Like, if your team goes on and accomplishes what it's capable of doing right now, do not let this dampen the joy of what's to come, because the sands of time are going to erase the sting on this. I don't think the further and further along we go, the NCAA would do anything crazy like vacate what comes next, although they could. And if they should, screw them, because that's not a real punishment. None of us actually acknowledge it. You don't have to pretend to care about what they do there. You can enjoy this for what it is. But this has been funny as hell. Like, we had the thing the other day about Connor Stallions apparently getting chirped by his HOA and having to represent himself in court, where, in defense for having a bunch of vacuum cleaners on his house and being accused of operating a business where he refurbished vacuum cleaners out of his house, his response was he believes the person that reported him for this either dislikes him for being a military veteran or is a Michigan State fan who dislikes him for being a Michigan coach. And that's how he referred to himself, as a Michigan coach. That is all funny. He referred to himself as a Michigan coach in the document where he represented himself in court. Like, the way this man perceives himself is a fascinating study in and of itself. But all of that is funny, Dad. Like, I read that and laugh. We should have a good time with that, with the guy with the porn name slinging vacuum cleaners out of his house.
And oh, by the way, it included their star running back, Blake Corum, for a bit, whose name was on the LLC with, the porn name Connor Stallions as well. And Blake's like, hold on, I'm getting my people involved in this one. Yeah. So I'm with you. It's been funny, but it's going to get past the funny stage, because it's going to get to lawyer terms and lawyer billing and all that kind of stuff. And I agree with you. Michigan fans, don't worry about it. If you're a little nervous about how you should feel, call a New England Patriot fan. See if Deflategate or Spygate affected their love at all for the fact that they put rings on their fingers. If Michigan is to go on and win the national championship, do not think twice that it is tainted or anything. Enjoy it.
And I think that's part of this, Dad, is a lot of people are worried about perception of this.
Yes.
And that's what Michigan is basically threatening with this letter. It's like, hey, if you think people are going to look at us funny for this, wait until everyone gets a whiff of all the other stuff that's going on. If it's just about the integrity of the game stuff. Dad, we've heard 2 words thrown around a lot in the last few days. I think I saw Desmond Howard mention this outside the White House when he was there with that group talking about student-athlete rights. Due process for Michigan. We've talked a lot about in the show that Some people have theorized, I brought up Peter Burns suggesting the other day that Michigan suspend Jim Harbaugh for the next 2 games. They let this legal injunction go into play, and then they kind of move this off to the side. But some people have pointed out that if you go out now, and I saw Dominique Foxworth, I thought, make this point really well from a former union representative perspective about this idea of setting precedent of if you go in now and you're Tony Petitti and you rush in and do the Roger Goodell of it all, where you're going to punish because everyone's putting pressure on you and you feel like you got to do something and you ignore the process that you're supposed to go through for this. Dad, does that do more harm than good right now if you're Tony Petitti going about it that way?
Well, I think there is a part of being careful of doing something right away and then all the other stuff that may come out. Now, we sit there and talk about all the other stuff that might come out. Mike, I don't think any of the other stuff coming out is going to be illegal or against the rules, though when you have a sportsmanship rule, that is a serious gray area. So all of a sudden, if Tony Petitti now has to deal with, well, these 3 schools called this school to let them know what the signals were against this other school, is that breaking the sportsmanship rule? Now Tony Petitti's going to have to deal with that. So I understand about rushing into something and what the domino effect on that is going to be. So his choices are do it or say we're going to let the NCAA play this thing out. And in all honesty, Mike, if he suspends Jim Harbaugh for 2 games, are the ADs and the Big Ten ADs and the Big Ten coaches who are all got on that call and yelled at Tony Petitti and complained and moaned to Tony Petitti, will they be satisfied if they hear a 2-game suspension? Will they be like, okay, that's good by us? I think they want them out of the postseason. And I think at the very least, so I don't think a 2-game suspension satisfies what they want out of this. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I go back and forth on it, if I'm going to be honest, Dad, but the more and more I hear, you could argue for that. I think ultimately if they tried to suspend for 2 games, that would at least seem like action to people and you'd be able to move on from there. I think the biggest takeaway is whatever happens, Tony Petitti's going to come out and be very clear and decisive, and then there's got to be a huddle about keeping the rest of this in-house right now. You got to get control of your locker room if you're Tony Petitti. This is for what years in the SEC with Mike Slive they were so good at was, hey, we're going to keep family business and infighting behind closed doors because projecting this out to the rest of the world makes us look messy and makes us look weak. And when you're supposed to be one of the Power 2 conferences marching forward into the future of college football, that ain't supposed to be you.
Yeah, it'll stay out. It'll stay in-house really well if any discipline goes down, and then at every press conference of every coach in the Big Ten is asked questions about this to see what their reaction is. That's going to be gold.
And then they've got to have the marching line in the company order to say, hey, we're moving on from this right now. We understand that this is a part of it. Whatever canned answer they want to give, they need to have ready.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. It is Thursday, and you know what that means. Thursday night football on Prime. Baby, it is on, getting ready to kick off Week 10 this evening. So, guys, Bears, Panthers, two teams who are not doing great, to say the least here. So we spoke to Andrew Whitworth on what to kind of expect in this battle of the cellar dwellers. Take a look.
You look at Bryce Young's situation, it's a young line for the most part. You know, one of his veterans, Austin Corbett, just came back in recent weeks. So I think that it's really one of those things that offensively they're struggling, and he needs somebody there that's like, hey, man, listen, here's some little things that we could be better at. Let's get off of the win and loss thing, and let's just find those little nuances that we could do better as an offense.
Guys, this game ultimately more likely to matter for draft positioning than anything else.
Yeah.
But how do we feel going into this one?
Not great. This is a true sickos bowl for the ages right now. DJ Chark, questionable for this game. Brian Burns, the star pass rusher for the Panthers, out in this game right now. So this is going to be, I'd imagine, a lot of conversation on that broadcast with Kirk Herbstreit, especially there with Al Michaels, talking about the future draft prospects that either of these teams could bring into their organization, especially on the quarterback front if you're the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, I mean, listen, remember the Bears have the Carolina's pick, right? So the Bears are good either way in this game. If they lose, their draft pick goes better. If they beat Carolina, Carolina's draft pick is better, and the Bears get it. So they're in pretty good shape. The one thing you could have looked forward to in this game is there's the continuing evaluation of Justin Fields. Is he going to be the guy going forward? But they can't evaluate that now because he hasn't been on the field. He's still got the thumb issue going on. Tyson Bagent is looking to play again in this one. So that's the one thing holding back, Mike, on Chicago, unless they've made their decision already, which obviously I don't know, between Justin Fields and Matt Eberflus of what may be going on with one of them or both of them moving forward with this team. Because with Carolina, we know it's Bryce Young. We know that they're going to build around it. I mean, the difference right now of what he's thrown to, Adam Thielen leads them with 62 receptions. The next closest is Jonathan Mingo with 20. And they have a bunch of guys in the team, so it is I'm looking to one guy right now. So they need other weapons, and Bryce Young needs to grow along with this, obviously, and spread it out as best he can while playing behind a line that has some injuries as well. So he is truly falling into that top high-pick quarterback with problems on the team to fix, which makes the C.J. Stroud thing, who was only picked one slot later, make you really continue to go wow at what he's doing. But I think we both believe he's got a little better of a team around him as they sit 4-4, and he's only thrown one interception. To me, that's been the key. Where are we at with Bryce? I think 8 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, but that's expected. So with Carolina, it's just another step in what we know is going to be this guy at quarterback. The Bears are going to go the rest of the year with, it's tough to even evaluate this guy, Justin Fields, because he's not even on the field for us. So what do we do? Well, we're getting a great look at Tyson Bagent, but let's also be honest, Tyson Bagent isn't going to be the quarterback of the future of this Bears team either. So they're a team kind of in spinning their wheels of what direction are we going to go?
I think that's the problem in this matchup is, at least for the Panthers, and if you're a Panthers fan, you kind of know, all right, we got work to do. Offensive line-wise here, Ike Ekwonu, their top overall pick from a couple of years ago, has had a really rough season at left tackle for a while. Chandler Zavala, their guard, was leading the NFL in pressures allowed. It's been areas where you thought might be a strength for this team have showed up and affected their quarterback in a negative way. You talk to people around there, and there's still a lot of belief that Bryce Young is the guy. And, Dad, you at least get to go forward this offseason with that in mind. You've got a clear plan of, hey, we got to add weapons around our star quarterback. We got to do everything we can to give him a shot. That is our charge. For the Bears, you're in this weird limbo right now, and we've seen a lot of the moves that Ryan Poles has made around the deadline the last couple of years sort of reflect that, where they had the trade this year to get Montez Sweat. Last year it was Chase Claypool, giving up a third-rounder for him, where they have all seemed like moves of a team that's trying to thread the needle of, well, we kind of want to compete now and add some stuff, and we're kind of trying to evaluate the quarterback, but he's hurting, so now we can't even do that. And at some point, Dad, that best ability is availability thing can't make the club in the tub thing. At some point, if you get to a certain point, and it sounds like, after a really awkward press conference this week, Matt Eberflus has said, yeah, well, Justin Fields is progressing, but we still haven't gotten him medically cleared by the staff to go out there and play, so he's doubtful. At a certain point in the back half of the season, internally, you're going to have to make up your mind one way or the other about what you're going to do going forward, because the availability factoring into this, coupled with your opportunity at the top of the draft, means you've got to start to be decisive. If nothing else, Dad, for self-preservation, for Ryan Poles especially and company, to say, all right, my jobs are on the line now. I'm going to be judged based off how this happened. And at the very least, people usually make decisions in the best interest of themselves.
Yeah, and listen, so this is going to be the question, obviously, is the quarterback position. So what can Chicago do is try and make yourselves better in other areas, knowing that even if you keep Justin Fields, you're on a rookie contract. If you draft a new quarterback, obviously you're on a rookie contract. You brought in Montez Sweat in the trade. You paid him as well. You're a defense that's been top 3 or 4 against the run this year, not good against the pass, only have 10 sacks, one of the reasons you traded for a Montez Sweat. So you got to get some more pressure, just 6 interceptions. You got to ball hawk a little more as well. So now they do have the ability to tinker around the quarterback position, given that one is on a rookie contract, and if they went away, the next would be on one as well. So that would be it for me. They're going to have to make a decision on the quarterback, and that's going to be pretty finite of, okay, we're going to get a top pick. We know it's going to be one of these two quarterbacks. Where is the tinkering and the rest of the team to try and make this a better team around whatever quarterback is going to be there?
We talk about offensive line a lot, too. I think for the Bears, if you're looking for places to feel heartened, Darnell Wright, Tevin Jenkins, the right side of that offensive line have looked really good as of late, especially Jenkins, who moved back and forth from tackle to guard for a while, dealt with some injury in prior seasons, has looked really good for them going back to this past weekend. And so you've started to hit in some of those places now. DJ Moore, especially in Justin Fields' best games, most of those games, the argument you could make if you're evaluating is they seemed like more DJ Moore games. We all go back to the Washington game because I believe that was in prime time with everybody watching. That game was a DJ Moore bigger, faster, stronger game where he was just going out there, getting loose against small wide receivers and making plays happen, which is what you'd want and expect from a number one wide receiver. So all of this discourse should tell you this is probably going to be a messy, sloppy game tonight. I hope for Herbie and Al's sake that they somehow get a better game, but I have a feeling, Dad, we're on track for a very disgusted Al Michaels in the second half of this game. Is his disdain for bad football. He can't even hide it anymore at this point. I don't blame him.
He doesn't. And listen, hopefully it turns out to be a more competitive game than we think. I mean, we all didn't think the Jets-Giants game was going to be as ugly as it was. So maybe, and we're going into this game thinking it's going to be ugly, so maybe it will surprise us. Well, not as bad as it was. That went beyond. No, listen, nobody thought like 3 of 34 on third down conversions and 24 punts. If you had that, on your DraftKings sportsbook, then hey, more power to you. If you pull that one, congratulations on being rich. But nobody saw it being that bad. We're going into this one thinking it's going to be that bad. So hopefully we can get surprised on the other side. I'll tell you what's really bad is anybody watching now sees you're in a different shirt. You're disgusting. You had a lot of meat at Fogo de Chao last night. You have the meat sweats. Do we have that picture of when Mike was getting up in the shirt that he was wearing? Look at the back sweat. This was 20 minutes into the show. He had back sweat. His pits were all pitted out. I mean, it was disgusting. So he's changed into the muscle shirt thing, and he's probably going to sweat that out. That is going to be worse than any game we get tonight, quite honestly. That's sweat.
Rough. It's rough. Yeah.
I can see Isn't it, Jesse? Pat McAfee goes with the sleeveless shirt now. This is way more comfortable. I feel free. I feel airy. Pat, listen, he's made a lot of really great business decisions, but convincing everybody that this is the uniform each and every day, that's a man after my own heart. Coming up next, we'll check in with our large adult son, Victor.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Dillon Brooks has been trash-talking LeBron since he was on the Grizzlies, okay? And he continued the trend prior to the Lakers taking on his new team, the Rockets, last night. Take a listen.
Ready to lock him up. Been shooting the ball well, he's been playing well, so I'm just there to make him tired, make him get into that, fourth quarter early.
Guys, I mean, he kind of did lock LeBron up as much as anybody can lock up LeBron James, okay? So Bron had 18 points, 7 of 13 for shooting. Didn't play in the fourth quarter because the game was just totally out of hand. Rockets taking the W, 128-94. Keep in mind, he was averaging like 25 points per game heading into Wednesday night.
Yeah.
So he did, I would say that he, Dillon Brooks accomplished what he was looking to do.
Well, this was also a game that got out of hand, right? I mean, it's 64-45 at half, though big leads in the NBA don't mean much. You see teams come back all the time. But this one got out of hand, so I don't know if we saw the true go for the dagger LeBron in this one. But, Mike, I'll say, hey, for Dillon Brooks, keep firing away, man. I mean, you've sold yourself as this guy. Don't back away from it, right? I mean, a lot of people jumping on him last year. He goes to Houston, gets 4 for 86, so he's making over $21 million a year, and he's sticking to his guns, man. I'm going to lock him up. He doesn't back down. So I give him that. Be who you are, and he certainly has been doing that. But at the end of the day, Jalen Green took over in this game. Jalen Green was a monster in this one with 28, 11 of 15 from the field. I think 5 of 6 from three-point land. So from a gain standpoint, he was the one that really took over. But everybody was looking at this little battle within the game with Brooks and LeBron.
It's because Dylan Brooks is such a weirdo about how he presents himself in the beginning of these games. Those awkward stare downs and this is multiple games where he's done it, where he'll go over to the other team's side of the court while they're shooting around, and he'll just stare at the guy that he's going to do. I've seen everyone talk about how it looks like a Japanese anime showdown where they stand there for like 3 episodes worth of real time. The funny part is, Dad, for him, I got to imagine, and this is a good reminder to everybody, is the bottom line, especially in sports, is incentivizing what you do. Dylan Brooks was paid handsomely to be exactly who he was. We looked at him in a couple of critical moments in Memphis and critical games, and we all got jokes off, and I think rightly so in some of those spots. But I remember JJ Redick going off about this, and it was true then and it's true now, is that guy with what he is asked to do is very good at that role. He's an agitator. Right. He's someone who plays compelling defense and can affect the outcome of a game with that, even if offensively he's not going to be as much of a help. And while this is not totally the Dylan Brooks effect, I got to imagine it's very, very satisfying for Dylan Brooks to sit there right now at 6th in the Western Conference standings at 4-3 and look all the way down at the bottom of the conference and see the 1-7 Memphis Grizzlies, who I get it, don't have Ja Morant right now either, but are struggling right now. Revenge is one of those things where, the best revenge is living good. Right now, Dylan Brooks has some of that going on in Houston.
Yeah, listen, he's averaging just under 15 points a game. I think he only had 5 last night, but I throw out a lot of last night because the game was just out of reach. But you go to the first
are
two
any of us
possessions.
Really measuring Dylan Brooks by points either?
Exactly
we're
right.
Measuring Dylan Brooks by what he does affecting guys like LeBron James.
By agitation, because you look at the first play, LeBron backed him down and scored. The second play, LeBron tried a spin move, and the ball went out of bounds, and Dylan Brooks stood there and screamed, at the crowd like Gladiator, like Russell Crowe, like, "Are you entertained?" I mean, it was hilarious right out of the gate.
I love Dylan Brooks for having that level of confidence in himself, because anyone else going through what Dylan Brooks, the level of bear poking that he did, the F around and find out that he was a victim of, would have shelled anybody else up. But again, when someone hands you that kind of check and says, "This is who we want you to be," it's a lot easier to look in the mirror and go, "Oh, you know what? They're wrong. I'm right, because my way of doing it got me paid this much money." He's got big defensive back energy, and that's how you go out there and get it done. So kudos to Dylan Brooks in that matchup there. Dad, unfortunately, the association, outside of a good late window game with Golden State and the Denver Nuggets, featured blowouts in the ones that we were paying attention to. Jesse, we had our large French son making his first pilgrimage to New York to go to Madison Square Garden, and that was grand opening, grand closing very quick.
Yeah, it was a difficult MSG debut for Victor Wembanyama, held to 14 points. Spurs losing 126 to 105. So not great. Here's what he had to say about it post-game.
I'm starting to get used a little bit to the rhythm, so the day was just like another away game, And it's a chance to be able to play in such a great arena. And we did have a rough start collectively, and but we're young, the youngest team in the league, so we're learning. As a young team, and any team really, we're gonna go through losing streaks someday during the season, through tough times, and it's gonna happen. But the most important is how we bounce back.
These comments coming after during the shoot around, he was like, "Yeah, it's not as big as I thought it was in here." He was like, "It's pretty nice, but not as big as I thought it would be."
Nice barn you got here.
Yeah.
It's like Hoosiers. You had measuring the hoop and everything. Well, it's an actual regulation-sized basketball court. Who
I was
knew?
like, listen, man, everything's going to seem smaller to you because you're so tall, okay?
Because you're 7'4".
I was going to say, that's a him thing. It's all a dollhouse to him.
Yes.
Yes. And you know what? He had a rough game, and even Popovich said after the game, listen, it's not about the wins and losses now. It's about him maturing and growing and learning. When he's dribbling at the top of the key, getting his pocket picked. Guys figuring things out on him a little bit. Just a bad shooting night, 0 for 6 from three-point land. It was just, he's right. They're young, they're learning, so it's going to take some time. He just had that monster game so early in the season. It was like, oh my God, are we going to get this every single night? No, we're not going to get it every single night. I think he's the first one to understand that.
Yeah, Dragon Ball Z reference for everybody here. Victor Wembanyama's Gohan. You're going to see flashes of the greatest power that we've ever seen, and then you're going to see him ride the rails a little bit, go up and down. I think this is good, though. That's healthy for us, Dad, coming off that 38-point game, to see, in this game last night, didn't score his first field goal until towards the end of the third quarter. Isaiah Hartenstein, Mitchell Robinson beat him up on the block, and that's what we expected right now. He's still on the thinner side. He's like early stage Giannis in that regard. You saw some of the flashes of fun stuff at the end. I think as much as anything, Dad, what I've enjoyed about the Victor Wembanyama experience so far, and this is all anecdotal, but with the comments that we've heard, even with how he presents himself in those in-game interviews now, we are seeing a more father figure-ish Greg Popovich publicly.
Yes,
I think we've always seen him putting the arm around Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker. There was clear love and respect with those guys, but the fire and brimstone version of Pop has come out a lot less often so far, because he reads the room really well. There's so many great things about Pop's leadership, what he is as a coach, but the ability to see the differences in every situation and understand what they call for, it seems like he's met this challenge with a different approach for him than we've seen. And part of it's really heartwarming. He does seem like a very loving dad out there right now with this player especially.
I agree. That's one of the, I think, great attributes of a coach is to be able to read your team. Do they need an arm around their shoulder, or do they need a kick in the butt? And which am I going to deliver? And we know he's been able to deliver the kick in the butt for sure, but he does the other side of it and realizes this is where he is right now, and it would do me no good to be yelling and screaming or doing the butt kicking right now. So that is, I think, the sign, without question, of a great coach. So we'll see how the year goes, but we don't expect San Antonio, to be this dominant team. We got a couple of decent ones last night with Golden State and Denver, a 3-point game where Klay Thompson can't get a three-pointer off in time to tie it. And you got a 3-point game with Philadelphia and Boston where Philly has double-digit lead there, and all of a sudden Boston almost makes it all the way back in that one, but Philly hangs on. I think Embiid went for 27 and 10 or something in the area of that. But so from the teams that we expect to be at the top, we had a couple of decent ones last night.
And we had the most embarrassing ejection I have ever seen with Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Milwaukee Bucks. Giannis goes down, gets a great poster dunk, stares the off defender down for a split second, and then gets his second technical of the game and gets tossed. That is ridiculous. I can tell you this, if that's the standard for ejection, man, if you gave me the ability to dunk like Giannis, I'd get ejected from every game because I'd be staring people down for much. I'd look like Dylan freaking Brooks after that dunk staring him down. That official in the NBA should be ashamed of themselves. What a joke that was.
I agree. Could not say anything more than that. I agree.
I left you a lot of time there. Enjoy it.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. So yesterday we discussed the latest college football rankings that have Ohio State, sitting in the top spot there. And that got us thinking, what if the NFL had a similar ranking committee? Who would the candidates be for the top spots there? So guys, for the first meeting of the NFL Playoff Selection Committee, we will be bringing in Jason Fitz of Yahoo Sports to deliberate. Fellas, not sure if we have him yet, but this is how we're going to do it. Yeah, it's going to be great.
We don't right now. We're lagging a little bit behind at this point, which is just a product of me right now. My body is not functioning at peak capacity. You're all seeing me, the filthy remnants of the meat sweats after a night at Fogo de Chao right now. Jason's been sitting in the chat asking why I'm wearing a tank top on air right now. No, I'm not trying to bite Pat McAfee's swag. He's got the market cornered on that. But I do understand, and I do get exactly why he would do this, Dad. I have felt free. The takes have flowed out easier because I'm comfortable right now. My body is still a furnace. I feel like at any moment I could have a physical reaction inside my stomach that wouldn't be good for anybody on this show. But all in all, this has been a great plot twist. And I've already gotten compliments on how jacked I look from people. So you're just dead wrong about this look for me.
Is your chair soaking wet? Did you sweat into the chair as well?
Yeah, I got up before and underneath my thighs were some pretty solid imprints. So it's all hot and bothered right now. Speaking of hot and bothered, Jason Fitz is in the chat with us here now. You can catch him breaking down college football and the NFL over at Yahoo Sports, also Fox Sports Radio on the weekends there. Fitzy, you don't strike me as a guy who's dealt with a lot of the meat sweats here. Your dainty stomach doesn't seem like it could handle the volume of meat needed to get that.
No, see, but here's the thing, Mike. When you're a little guy, you don't have to eat as much meat to get the meat sweats. My question is, why do you lack the self-control to walk away from the meat sweat table? Like, this is not, your dad's right on this one. Like, this is not a good look for you. Like, this looks like you've given up, like you've lost all hope. Like, maybe you just sort of rolled out of bed and you're like, I'm done. I don't know. I looked at it, I thought, man, have things gone south and Mike can't afford sleeves anymore? Like, I don't know what's happening here, Mike. Like, I think you can do better, be better, Junior.
Can't afford sleeves. Jason, if you looked like this, would you ever wear sleeves right now? Our friend Jersey Joe on Twitter said it best. Meat sweats are the body's way of saying, I'm proud of the work you did last night on that, whatever the meat product was. So my body is expressing its pride and joy in me, Jason.
I will say, Jason, that I agree with Mike when you don't, and disagree with you. You just don't walk away. You stuff yourself as much as you possibly can before you waddle out of that place. That's just what you do. At a place where they just keep bringing you meat, it's one thing if you get an entree and that's all you get. So, but it's another thing if you can keep eating that same product, in this case a meat product, you do it until you feel, it's like Thanksgiving. You just eat until you feel disgusting, knowing full well you're going to unbuckle your pants, lay down on the couch until everything goes down a little bit, and then you're going to do the whole thing again. So I am with Mike as far as just jamming as much as you can.
It feels like a lack of training, personally. Like, if you knew you were going to go somewhere where you were going to have to eat that much, like, your body doesn't get as sore if you're working out every day. Speaking from expertise on that one, I'm saying your body's way of telling you that you've done something is the fact that my lats feel a little sore from all the rows yesterday. That's your body. Like, meat sweats is just telling you that you haven't been eating enough meat, Mike. Like, I know you well enough. You prep every day until you get to the meats.
You know what this is, Mike? If we, the three of us, went to where you went to Fogo de Chao Jason would go over to the salad bar. That's where he would.
100%. Oh right? God, he'd be wasting space on the rabbit food. There.
You think I got my first ab. My first ab has moved in. Like, there's no way I'm ruining it. My first ab has moved in. I'm letting him check out the neighborhood, see maybe he wants to invite his buddies to move in. I might end up getting a second ab. Like, there's no chance that I'm ruining that with meat sweats. Come on, I got an ab in the neighborhood.
Put it on the poll. Do you actually believe Jason Fitz has an ab? Because I absolutely do not. Pun fully intended. Are you gonna? Were you reaching to pull up the shirt here? I'm a little worried right now. I'm gonna get belly button.
Oh no! Don't do that.
No, okay.
No. All
right. In an effort to move us away from Jason Fitz's belly button on air, let's get to what we brought you here for, Jason. Back during our time at ESPN, you pioneered the NFL Playoff Committee as a format for trying to figure out who the best team in the NFL is. We've done this in college football now for the last decade in the CFP era, but in the NFL, we're at a very interesting juncture of the season where we've had a team like the 49ers hit the skids in the last 3 games and really struggle. You've got the Bengals coming on late after the early start of the season. And so for the College Football Playoff Committee, the things that they're considering right now, the strength of the resume that you've accomplished, head-to-head opponents here, who you've scheduled so far, the games that you've won this season, quality wins, quality losses, all of these things factored into it. We don't have conference championships as a metric or anything like that. And of course, the almighty eye test. So, Jason, I want to start to approach this looking at the top 3 first. For anyone unfamiliar, in the College Football Playoff Committee's process, they actually debate the top 3 teams first and try and figure that out before going forward. Let's start with an easy number 1 and try and get consensus there. Jason, who do you think is the best team in football right now?
Yeah, if the committee was meeting now, Philly gets the top spot. I don't think there's any doubt on that, not just because they have the least number of wins, but because they have some impressive wins along the way. So, yeah, Philly to me gets the top spot. That one's easy.
I agree.
Dan,
I think Philly. Yeah, I think Philly is the easy pick for number 1 at this point. And quite honestly, I still don't think they've hit their stride. But as Nick Sirianni has said, and I agree, it's first and 8 or 9 every single time for them because of how well that brotherly shove works. We laugh at it all the time, but it is an unbelievable tool in the tool belt for the Philadelphia Eagles.
And you look at the teams they've beaten, the Miami Dolphins that they beat, who, again, we know the flaws in that roster, but they were the first team to go out, or the second team, after the Buffalo Bills to go out and beat that Dolphins team. The Cowboys, close win this past weekend. The Minnesota Vikings, who I think especially at the juncture they got them at there, that we were starting to see some of the things pile up there. The weird loss to the Jets is the one that's going to stick in everybody's craw. Jason, tell me how you feel about this. I wanted to go college football comps for these teams. Philadelphia feels like Michigan, where we haven't seen them have to play their best necessarily yet, but coming off of last year, built well along the lines of scrimmage, quality quarterback who can also hurt with his legs. They seem like the Michigan Wolverines to me, which means Connor the Stallion should be grabbing some Eagles gear soon.
No, well, and I think you're right. I think the one thing that Philly has on the resume now that you can't really deny is that Cowboys win, and the Cowboys always get some level of credit from the committee, right? Like the Cowboys in this scenario are always going to get a little bit of love. So that feels like a quality win, but you're right. Like there's no doubt that Philly, I think that's a comp. That's good comp on that.
All right, so let's go. Who's the number 2 team? I would, in this spot in my rankings, I have the Kansas City Chiefs. Quality wins against the Jags, Dolphins, and Minnesota Vikings. Your only 2 losses on the year. Opening night to the Detroit Lions when you had no Chris Jones, no Travis Kelce in that game. Human committee taking into account the people that weren't on the field. And then the inexplicable loss to the Bronco, which Patrick Mahomes flu game that didn't go Jordan flu game route there. They're my Georgia in this equation, Fitz, where maybe it's because of the past that I have built into my brain, my very human brain understanding the context of this. They're the standard in the NFL right now, and based on what I've seen, especially defensively from them, I feel comfortable with them in the 2-hole.
I think you are right that the committee would put them in the 2-hole because the committee is told to factor who was on the field, who wasn't on the field, things like that you mentioned, human nature. However, if we were in the committee together, this is where I would look at you and I would yell loudly, does head-to-head not matter? And I don't think today on a neutral field that I would feel comfortable betting your house on the Lions over the Chiefs, but the Lions have a head-to-head win and the same record over the Chiefs. So when you're talking about 2 teams with the same record and a head-to-head win for the Lions, I don't know how we can put the Chiefs ahead of the Lions when they have played this year and the Lions won that football game.
That's interesting. So I'll be interested. So who would your number 2 team be then?
I'm right. I say very hesitantly. I think I'm putting Baltimore too.
I listen. That's where I was going. I was letting you go first. I'm going Baltimore number 2. That offense is a top 10 offense. Overall, they're number 1 running the ball. Lamar Jackson is throwing the ball better, completing over 70% of his passes. He's still running, whether it's a planned run or a scramble, about 9 times a game. Remember, they said he was going to run less and throw more. Now, 9 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. So that hasn't been the greatest as far as those stats concerned from him throwing the ball. I'm sorry, 3 interceptions for Lamar, not 7. 9 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. But the main reason I'm putting them number 2, their defense. Their defense is stud-like. Leading in sacks, they're second overall to Cleveland. Those are the top two defenses, but their defense is playing ball right now, and the offense is answering the bell overall, and like I said, running the ball. So to me, I'm giving them that complete team kind of emphasis on them and putting them at number 2.
And they have the win over Cincinnati. I know Joe Burrow wasn't himself then, but they have a win over Cleveland, a defense that's respected, a dominant win over Cleveland. They got a dominant win over Detroit. They got a dominant win over the Seahawks, who at the time the committee probably respected. I mean, they got all of the resume wins you could possibly ask along the way. And it takes me out of having to pick between Kansas City and the Lions where head-to-head matters. So yeah, I'm taking Baltimore at number 2. Let's go.
I had Baltimore at 4 behind the Bengals.
Really?
I threw out
behind the Bengals.
I threw out head-to-head, and I think especially, and this is the one where the Bengals to me are the ultimate. The Bengals to me, by the way, in the comparisons we're making in college football, they're Alabama, where they're really starting to pass the eye test right now. And after getting through some of the early season scaries because of how your quarterback looked, now all of a sudden you're playing some of the best football that we've seen, and you're a brand I can trust. And I think that as much as anything, the Joe Burrow of it all, the way that Lou Anarumo's defense has gone out and worked, and I understand that was a close game against Baltimore, and that's with Joe Burrow at a limp right there. And so I say on a neutral field now, Baltimore's rush offense, fantastic. I'm counting on Lou Anarumo there. I think the defenses there can be closer to a wash, even accounting for the fact that Baltimore is probably overall the better of the two. But offensively right now, I would say with the Bengals and Joe Burrow in critical moments, that passing attack has more time under task with their parts involved. We're still watching Baltimore learn every week more and more about their pass catchers, more and more about how to integrate some of the things that Todd Monken wants to do. And so right now, I would probably say I would still, if you put them on the field again, I would pick the Bengals right now.
Yeah, but the Bengals have a bunch of losses. Does that not matter? I agree with everything you just said about where they're headed, but still, I'm sitting in the committee saying, hey, maybe they'll get through. This is one of those, and you know this well, Mike. This is one of those, the committee will let it work itself out. Hey, the Bengals will get really good so we can bury them, and we'll let the Bengals work their way up week after week. That's way easier.
Okay, so how about this? Because I think I see the logic in your guys' thought here by the way that we're supposed to judge this as a committee. How about this for an order? Would you guys agree Philadelphia, Kansas City, and then Baltimore at 3? Or are you guys adamant that you think Baltimore should be at 2 and we need now Kansas City down 1?
Adamant Baltimore is at 2. The offense is playing by far well enough, and the defense is just stud-like. So to me, they get the nod over Kansas City. And to me, they're a solid 2. I mean, and then you start to look at Kansas City when they talk about quality wins. Is the Dolphins a quality win anymore? Dolphins can't beat a good team. Minnesota, is that a real quality win? Jacksonville, I think, is playing well. It's a quality win.
I think Minnesota was a quality win. Once they stopped with the turnover issues that they had, we saw unparalleled, unprecedented turnover luck go poorly for the Minnesota Vikings. And I think we saw by the end, before Kirk Cousins got hurt, there was a lot of hope around what that team could potentially be in the NFC North. So, yes, I will still say that Vikings win counts as a good one.
Yeah, but I think... Go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead, Jason.
I think your point's right here because, remember, they got the win over Miami, but they only played one solid half of football in that game. They lost to Denver before that. They were okay against the Chargers. They struggled against Denver. They struggled against the Jets with Zach Wilson. They struggled, or they beat the snot out of Chicago, but Chicago stinks. Mike, if I had to ask you to support Kansas City without saying a single thing about anything that's ever happened not in this year, how can you support that this year's Chiefs with that offense are actually the number 2 team in the NFL?
Because I would point to that defense and say, well, yes, the Baltimore Ravens defense is great. Chiefs defense is 5th in DVOA. That's been a really solid group this year, and it's not the thing we usually word associate with the Chiefs, so it's not as fun and sexy to talk about. I would ask both of you guys, we put Baltimore and Kansas City on the field tomorrow. Who are you picking?
Baltimore. I'm picking. I still need to see someone else than Travis Kelce. Is it Rashee Rice, the rookie? Okay, he's been playing well, no doubt about it. Baltimore's defense to me is just too good. And the added of Lamar Jackson still running the ball, and he's throwing the ball better, and they have better receivers, even though Odell Beckham hadn't been what we all thought he was going to be, though he had a good game last week. Head to head right now, I take Baltimore. So we're flipping back and forth on those two. Who do we have at 4? Is Cincinnati number 4 for all of us, or is there somebody else?
Why do you guys hate the Lions?
It sounds like Jason wants Detroit.
I mean, Detroit has to be in this conversation.
All right, then put them in. Are you making them 4 or 3? You putting them 3, or where are you putting them?
I mean, I'd be comfortable putting them 4, but like I can't. Looking at Detroit this year, if we're going to say that Kansas City is the number 3 team, right, then Detroit, either way, has a win over Kansas City, that team. There are 2 losses at this point for Detroit. What, they got the loss to Seattle. That's a loss. And then they just got dominated by Baltimore. So that does violate the thou shalt not get blown out credence of the committee. I understand that. But I mean, they have the best win. The win over Kansas City would be the best win that any of these teams we're talking about.
Well, you just said the committee takes into account things. Travis Kelce didn't play in that game, and they beat him by a point. So
Chris
listen,
Jones
I
also
love
didn't
Detroit
play in that game.
Right, Chris Jones did. I have picked Detroit to play Philadelphia in the NFC Championship game, so I love Detroit. This one probably goes more to the eye test, even though they have one more loss than Detroit, and usually you don't see this. I go to the eye test, and I would put Cincinnati 4 over Detroit with the eye test. I would have Detroit number 5, that first team on the outside looking to jump in when one of the top 4 screws up. So again, I don't want to disrespect Detroit because of the record, because I do still, and I'm not changing my pick at this point of them in the NFC title game with Philadelphia. But right now, I'll put them 5.
But I'm also going to sit here and look at the Bengals and say, somebody explain to me a 27-3 loss to a bad Titans team. Like, I mean, that's an abject disaster on the resume. I'll buy
that was the remnants of injured Joe Burrow, though. That was the last game where Joe Burrow's calf was really part of the problem. And you saw he couldn't move. He couldn't get away from that Titans pass rush. And then ever since then, once they got the chance to calm down, especially got the bye week mixed in there, you've got 3 straight wins now against the Seahawks, the 49ers, and the Bills. 3 straight wins against 3 straight likely playoff teams, all three of whom are vying for potentially winning their division. That counts for something. The what have you done for me lately once your quarterback has come back and looked like himself physically.
Yeah, but...
And by the way, they beat the Cardinals as well, so they have 4 wins in a row.
Yeah, but I'm still going to go back to, 24-3 to Cleveland and 27-3 to Tennessee. I don't care. You want to tell me, Mike, that the committee would look at Alabama losing 2 games by 3 touchdowns to lesser opponents and say, well, it's a backup quarterback. Like, there's no way the committee would justify 2 blowout losses in that process.
Fitz, we almost did that in 2017 with USC before Sam Darnold took over. That was the best 3-loss team in football. People were very worried about that. We've got actual precedent of the committee looking and saying, well, you didn't have the right quarterback in there. And listen, when you've got calf-strained Joe Burrow, that would qualify as not the right quarterback. So let's try and settle in on our top 4 in the NFL right now. We've all been consensus Philadelphia at number 1.
Yep.
I've been overruled, and you guys want to put Baltimore at number 2.
Yes.
So two-thirds vote in the committee. We'll have the Ravens at number 2. Dad and I would both have then Kansas. We'd have Kansas City at 3 then, right? We're all in agreement on that behind Baltimore.
We'll put Kansas City at 3.
And then Dad and I would say the Bengals at 4. Fitz is arguing for Detroit there. We would have them just on the outside looking in, which, by the way, so if we go that route, if Dad and I overrule there, and so we end up going Philly, Baltimore, Kansas City, and Cincinnati at number 4, first outside looking in, would that be Detroit and then San Francisco? Is that how we would order the last 2 out?
Listen, I'm giving it to Detroit right now. I mean, I am. San Francisco is just not obviously playing well. They got to come back and prove a little bit. I am a big fan of what Detroit's doing. Obviously, a couple of games ago, getting shelled by the Ravens does not help. I do understand that. But yes, I would put Detroit at 5.
Yeah, I'm good with Detroit at 5, but Duval's going to be up in your mentions if they don't even get mentioned. 5 straight wins and they don't get a chance.
Wow, that's right.
That's a fair point. Detroit and Jacksonville in the first 2 out seem like a really good spot there at GoJo and Golic on Twitter. I'm sure no one will be mad. At Jason Fitz on Twitter is where you can find him. Check him out. Watch him. Watch him and listen to him over covering college football and the NFL for Yahoo Sports. Listen to him on the weekends for Fox Sports Radio. Fitzy, appreciate the time, brother. We'll bring you back for the committee next week and see if everyone still hates us.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. The Rams surprising everybody by signing Carson Wentz. That's right. Consequently, they did waive Brett Rippon, who had stepped in while Matt Stafford is dealing with a UCL sprain in his thumb. So, guys, the Wentz signing, really just another symptom of a full year of quarterback injuries in the NFL. So that got us thinking. With so many injuries, Matthew Stafford, just one of them, at the QB spot this season, what is the long-term prognosis for some of these teams? I mean, what are they going to do in this situation? Cardinals, great example, okay? Getting Kyler Murray back this week. But is Kyler Murray the guy in Arizona of the future? What do we think?
First off, with the Carson Wentz signing, I'm excited, Dad and Jesse, that he gets to add another piece of issued gear to his next tryout outfit. Do you guys remember when he went and did that full padded workout with every piece of issued gear from every team that he had been a part of up until that point? I think it was Colts, Commanders, and Eagles all equally represented. So Rams, good colors. The Ramley, I'm sure, happy to be a part of that, Dad.
Isn't it amazing, Mike, how many years ago it was that halfway before he blew his knee out diving into the end zone when he was an MVP candidate, where his career has gone from there? Just amazing, right? From, man, almost to the mountaintop to just, waiting to get a phone call.
He's got a career record now of 46, 45, and 1 here. So pretty wild.
We used to spend tons of sports talk airtime on the Dak Prescott versus Carson Wentz debate in the world of sports when they were both in the NFC East. Tell that and explain that to your children now. But, Dad, Jesse brought it up. It's an interesting time to do a checkup on a lot of NFL teams, and not just the future of this season, because for a lot of these teams, it's that old line. I think it was Bill Polian talking about the backup quarterback for the Colts and said, if that guy's in, we're not going to win.
We're done.
Peyton Manning's not in the game anymore. It doesn't matter who our backup is. We're going to lose because the whole system's built around this guy being that great. And so for a lot of these teams, that's the reality for this year. But long-term, a little bit of a checkup here. Let's start with Arizona, Dad. Come the start of 2024, do you think Kyler Murray's the starting quarterback for the Cardinals anymore? Because I think we're getting, barring something unforeseen, unless in the darkness while Kyler Murray has been away, he has completely revamped his relationship with that organization. Jonathan Gannon pewed all the right buttons with him and got him to a point now where he's ready to buy in and be a different player than we saw. I really struggle to see how Arizona doesn't turn the page given the opportunity they've got with the number 1 overall pick right now in the 2024 draft.
So to be a new offense for him, so we have yet to see him in said new offense. I was surprised at the pick way back when they made it, and I didn't think it was going to pan out for him with the Cardinals. And I still don't. But we've talked about the one side of the coin where he has the injury protection. If he gets hurt and doesn't pass a physical in March, he's guaranteed $30 million. So Arizona is taking that chance. But also to see him in this new system, right, of what he's going to look like in here. So I would say probably, do we think Arizona has made up their mind already? To me, if they had made up their mind already, they wouldn't put him on the field and risk the possibility
100%.
of that $30 million of him getting hurt. So I think maybe they want to see how he plays in this offense. So I think for them, the jury is out. For me, I think eventually, they're going to be moving on from him.
I would agree, but you're right. No, they would not risk putting him out here if that wasn't the case. And listen, the players involved in that too. Once he's medically cleared, it would be very interesting and obvious for the Cardinals if all of a sudden we're like, yeah, we're not going to put that guy out there on the field right now. Now, if you had conversations with Kyler and his camp behind closed doors and they wanted to try and facilitate a trade, if that had become part of the conversation, it's one thing. But Drew Petzing, their offensive coordinator, said there's going to be no restrictions on Kyler Murray going into this weekend. So they're going to go and see. And it's an offense that's going to look very different than what he's used to. They've been under center a lot more than we've seen Kyler Murray in the past. And so I don't think he's their guy next year, but you're right. They are giving this an earnest try just by taking the risk of having him back out on the field.
And let me quickly say, for both of us, I think I speak for both of us, when we're talking about these quarterbacks and some we think being gone, I hope every one of them succeeds. I hope if I think Kyler Murray is not going to be the quarterback of the future, I hope he proves me wrong. I mean, this isn't just to diss these guys. This is just being an analyst, us being analysts and saying what we think. I hope these guys play well and make it without question.
God, yeah, if you're new here, I don't know if you're going to find a more pro player outfit than us 9 out of 10 times. So this is not said with malice and rooting for, but it's reading the situation and the opportunities that these teams have. And Chicago's the same way. Dad, I was beating the drum as hard as anybody for Justin Fields last offseason when the Bears had the number 1 overall pick about, no, you keep him around, you try and build, and you try and finally cater an offense to the skills of your quarterback. And it's been mixed results, mostly because of injury, Dad. We've seen flashes where they've gotten him on the move. They've allowed him to do some of the things that we'd expect Justin Fields to have success with. But this is another one where the sample size is incomplete in large part due to injury. You're going to have 2 picks in the top 5 with that Panthers pick that you've brought over here. And if you're Ryan Poles, we talked about it earlier in the show, you've got an opportunity to reset your clock as the GM and attach yourself to a quarterback that you pick. Right. Which is almost always the measure of those guys' jobs, and I think we need to not discount self-preservation in this.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing, too, you have to look at, and going back to the Arizona thing, the coaching staff, the new staff and management wasn't part of the Kyler Murray pick. You know, Matt Eberflus wasn't part of the Justin Fields pick. So, you know, where does that all play into it of the, you know, how are you going to be with that person, you know, standing by their side if you weren't there when you picked him? I like Justin Fields, Mike, man. I was rooting hard for him this year. With 2 picks there, I find it hard to believe that they're probably not going to move on. Again, you can't see any more improving right now because he's missed game after game after game with the thumb. So hoping he can get back to see what can happen because they tried to build around him a little bit. You know, obviously in the trade, getting DJ Moore, trying to build that old line, helping the defense with Sweat and signing him. So I do like what they're doing around it. We haven't really seen great practical application on the field, but I do have a feeling they're going to move on from him.
Yeah, this is more about opportunity cost in my mind. And it's a reminder of what we talked about the other day relative to C.J. Stroud, that more quarterbacks are ruined than can come in and overcome circumstance. The Joe Burrow situation in Cincinnati is an outlier in terms of what he overcame protection-wise. Right. Justin Fields been through multiple coaching staff. He's been through multiple coordinators. We said with the Matt Nagy coaching staff, it felt like they were fighting their quarterback with the way they called offense. None of that is conducive to a young quarterback growing. And then you factor in injury at the end of last season and now injury in the middle of this season. All of it a net negative when you're trying to create a place where your quarterback can succeed. And with the draft opportunity, I think that's hard to pass up. Dad, Daniel Jones is the real interesting one here. He signed that deal in the offseason. We know he's got a big number still with them next year. According to Tankathon right now, the Giants currently sit and would sit at 4th in draft position in this upcoming draft, which is a weird spot in a draft where I think you're going to have 2 clearly defined top quarterbacks in Drake May and Caleb Williams that are going to come off the board at 1 and 2. And so for the Giants kind of sitting in no man's land and with that salary, Dad, while I've kind of been back and forth on this in recent weeks, I think barring something unforeseen, Daniel Jones is probably going to have to be your guy going forward next year, and you might have to use this capital to build up more of the roster around him so that if it doesn't work out with him, you can hit the dismount with somebody else.
I agree. I think the money takes care of this one. Again, it's a $69 million dead cap hit next year. That would be the most we've seen in the NFL. I just don't think any team's going to want to do it. Now, are there ways to structure things? This is well beyond, you know, my mental capacity of doing things and how you do them. But that's a number I'm looking at right now. So I do think that money holds this one up and that he will be back with the Giants next year.
Yeah, it does seem like the more and more along we go, it's an opportunity for the Giants to do what they really didn't do this offseason, which is use a lot of their capital in other places. Yes. You had the back and forth with Saquon Barkley, which is still going to be a thing this upcoming offseason after the way that you structured that last deal. But, Dad, I think they've got to now really commit themselves to fixing a number of the other ills on their roster. Whoever you put at quarterback behind that offensive line at this current juncture is going to have a bad time. You don't have enough receiving weapons yet. The defense has thankfully started to come alive, but you've got a lot of other holes in the dam that you've got to plug if you're the New York Giants. We can take a look at some of the other quarterback positions on another day. The Jets and Aaron Rodgers, we believe, are going to be fine going into next year. The Rams and Matthew Stafford, as he's got yet another injury, that just feels like par for the course for him. And, of course, the Minnesota Vikings and Kirk Cousins, what their plans look like now after that Achilles injury.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Guys, the Sooners are not going to be making the college football playoffs this season, okay? And unless they get some help from other teams around the conference, they're not even going to make the Big 12 championship here. So in spite of that, Oklahoma wide receiver Drake Stoops rejects the idea that they have nothing left to play for.
I come in here day in and day out, spend 10 hours up here every day, and for me there's a lot left to play for. And I bust my tail year-round for this for 6 years now, so I'm not really listening to what people say.
As long as you have games to play, you have something to play for.
Yeah, I don't care if we're 0-8 right now. I'm playing ball because I love to play football. I love my teammates, I love my coaches, I love the University of Oklahoma. It's really that simple. I got a lot of pride for this place, so I'm gonna go hard every single day and do everything I possibly can to see us win, and that's the end of it.
I mean, it feels kind of strange, but we, I guess, have to remind people that even if you're not winning games, you still have to show up to film, to lifting, to practice. It's not like they're like, we're not doing well, so why don't you guys just take the week off?
One thing Drake should be careful of is I'm here 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
You're only allowed 20 hours a week. So you said 10 hours a day, so be careful on that.
The NCAA was
listen,
like, what?
Yeah. Wait, what did he say? But listen, I mean, he's right. This is football. I mean, we've been doing this since we were kids. We love the game. So now we're sitting here talking about it's more of a business with NIL and getting ready for the pros. So not playing in a bowl game, or when do you not take games seriously because you're getting ready for the next level. It's such a small amount of players that we're talking about when we talk that. And the majority, I'm thinking, again, 130 Division I schools, just Division I with 85 scholarships. Do the math. I mean, that's, I think, over 11,000 people playing football, and you're talking about in a draft, a couple hundred. So this is a game we all grew up loving. We love playing the game, but the headline sometimes goes to, the top guy who may go in the draft, should he go play in a bowl game? I mean, man, the games matter. You hate losing, but you go in the next day or the next week and you want to play a game. I've said this and I'll say it till the day I die. The thing I miss most about football, and it wasn't just the NFL, it was college, it was high school. I'll miss the locker room. Man, I'll miss being with the guys. I'll miss hanging out, and then playing ball together. I mean, that's what you're doing. You're playing a game. And for 98% of the people that go all the way and play through college, that's where it's going to end. So, of course, the love of the game and you want to go play, we get lost, Mike, sometimes in the sight of, should you play? Should we care about this? Should we not? Should we play in this bowl game? Looking forward to the draft. When, again, 98%, 99% of the guys are out there, man, just playing ball, knowing, just like the commercial says, they're going pro in something else other than football.
Yeah, I refuse to support that commercial propaganda for what it's worth. But I understand the point that you're making there. I just didn't understand those sons of you-know-what. I think meaning is something that's different to everybody because you love football. You don't always like having to go out to practice towards the end of the season when it sucked like this. There's plenty of guys that are also looking forward to winter break, looking forward to the offseason after all that, especially because of the toll that this takes. It's not perfect, but you're right. We think of meaning usually in one context, and it's a financial one. And I understand that because for so long, there was a massive gulf in the economics of college football and the economics of the NFL and the opportunity for the top guys to go out there and get their thing. But for everyone else who just even wants a crack at the next level or who wants a chance to go out there and continue to get more playing time for themselves in college, man, self-preservation. I've said it a bunch of times on the show today, but it applies to this too. I never got to think about higher order stuff like that over the course of the season. I was trying to figure out every day, what do I do to show the coaches that I'm worth having out on the field? And once I got on the field, how do I make sure that I stay there every day? And that's not what happens on Saturday thing. That's what do I have to do in the training room that morning? What do I have to do in meetings that afternoon? What am I bracing for there? The day-to-day reality, 5 minutes in front of your face cliche stuff is so true. That's the meaning for most everyone there. I mean, Jesse, you were a college athlete. You understand that as well. of us, especially because there wasn't a pro option beyond that of meaning looks a lot of different ways to a lot of different people in this.
Yeah, frankly, let's be honest here. Even if you're straight up not having a good time because your team is sucking, you still have to go to all this crap. So no duh, you want to go win on the field. Like, you're not just going to give up. It's ridiculous to have to explain this much time being dedicated to something. You're going to care at least a little bit about the outcome.
Yeah, that's why I guess I laugh overall, Dad, at this idea that people think, and this has happened too, like, people think that guys that transfer are lesser competitors, as if that decision is super easy to uproot your life on campus and go to this different place and trying to learn all this stuff, or that the guys that skip out on bowl games do so. I mean, you all saw Caleb Williams in the crowd after that game. That stuff mattered to him. Going out there and being with his teammates matters to all these guys to different extents, but at some point the financials are impossible to ignore for some of these guys, especially when it comes to games. And I know meaningless sounds like a dirty word when it comes to the bowl games, even though we have plenty of people that like these bowl games that admit we've probably got too many of them at certain times. But with the Jake Butts in the background and Jalen Smiths in the background, that's where that comes up, is weighing the risk reward there. Doesn't mean you don't care. It just means that you're aware of the same financial game everyone else has been playing for a long time in this sport.
Yeah, and plus, if we're talking football, this is true really of all athletes, but this was a football conversation with Drake Stoops. Man, if you're not prepared, you still got games to play. And if you start slacking off, you know what happens on the field? You get your ass kicked. And nobody wants that. So all of a sudden, if your season doesn't go well and you start slacking off, you'll find out on the practice field and then certainly in the game, oh boy, I better not be slacking off because the guy that's playing against me doesn't give a damn. He's trying to bury me.
Also, LOL, because Drake Stoops has been at OU for 6 years. So he's like, yeah, been here my whole life. 10 hours a day.
Stay there as long as you can, Drake.
Yeah.
With that last name, he's been around there a lot longer than that, man.
Yes.
Like being a Stoops at Oklahoma, you better have that attitude because that name means something around those parts there. Speaking of meaningful football left, we would not be pro player members of the football media if we did not at least say publicly on air the NCAA should be ashamed of themselves for the way that they're dealing with James Madison right now, who James Madison is in the middle of their transition from FCS football to FBS football, Division 1A football, however you've referred to it over the years. And in that transition period that's been a part of the NCAA bylaws, you're usually not eligible for postseason play. Now, part of that's done. The spirit of the rule thing is in part to protect these teams making the transition, to make sure that they have the time to gather resources. Usually, you're allowed to mix the schedule if you want. Still have FCS teams on the schedule and mix in some D1 teams there. Right. It's also meant to make sure that a team's not trying to ride the hot hand of one good team, get them up to that level, and then drop back down soon after that. James Madison has already gone out and been playing a full Sun Belt schedule. Yes. The conference has accommodated them from the jump, so they've been playing a full FBS schedule so far, playing it well, might I add. They checked in front of Notre bleeping Dame this week in the polls there, but is not opportune here. And they're trying to make the point, Dad, they've made another plea to the NCAA, trying to petition again to remove the postseason ban so they can play in the postseason and in the Sun Belt Championship game that they'd be in line to play in, by saying, no, we resource this the right way. You don't have to protect us from anything. And to ignore the obvious differences in this situation, Dad, seems to fly in the face of the spirit of this rule.
And oh, by the way, the top group of 5 team in the college football rankings plays in a New Year's Six Bowl. And right now that would be Tulane, right? And they're sitting at number 23 with a loss. So this is another just archaic thing by the NCAA to not give James Madison, to put them in the conversation of being able to play in the postseason in a bowl game. It's an absolute joke. They'll try and appeal again. Hopefully the NCAA will listen this time and grant it to them. But knowing the NCAA, they'll deny him yet again.
Yeah, exactly. And the people that unfortunately are the losers in that situation are the athletes involved, who are doing something unprecedented in the way that they've managed this jump up to the next level. And so again, they're not trying to game the system. They're not someone that needs protection here. Let them play ball and let them shine right now because they deserve it. right, guys, time to finish off the show the way that we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you off into the rest of your day. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review. Leave us that 5-star rating. Check us out here live, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. But if you miss any of the show, including guests like our good buddy Jason Fitz from Yahoo Sports, who stopped by to help us do the NFL Playoff Committee rankings there, which I apologize to Jacksonville Jaguars fans. Your name should have been brought up a lot more.
Yes.
I know the Dolphins fans are going to be all ticked off here, although, I mean, the way it's gone recently for Miami, I think you can understand why they weren't top of mind necessarily.
Exactly. Jacksonville winning 5 in a row. We owe an apology to Jacksonville, without a doubt.
Yeah, that's our bad on that one. Duval, absolutely deserving to be in part of that conversation here. We'll wear the hat on that. Make sure you go and check that out if you missed it, wherever you get your podcast, or on the DraftKings YouTube channel right after we get done here. And guys, let's start off with this. Deion Sanders came out the other day and threw some cold water on the idea of his son Shedeur Sanders, their starting quarterback, in the NFL draft. He asked if he was listening to the draft talk, and Deion said, quote, "Why would we when we're having a great time here? When we appreciate and love where we are, it's hard to look at somewhere else." Now, Dad, I want to believe that this is just Deion's way of trying to put this conversation off for another day and not have it be a distraction for them in the midst of a season that's already kind of going off the rails. Because I would hope and believe that Deion Sanders, the father especially, and the coach here, whatever hat you're wearing, if the draft grade for his son Shedeur Sanders is near the top of the draft, as for parts of this season certain pundits had him, that he would give him the advice to go out there and go make that next level money right now. You can show me NIL valuations till you're blue in the face, but that guaranteed first round money, if that's what he would be in line for, certainly hits different. You can make an argument for staying based on the fact that he wouldn't be the first or second quarterback taken, but I digress.
Mike, we're going to disagree here. I think that he will come back and go back to Colorado and try and be the number 1 pick next year. Remember earlier when this was brought up, Deion was saying, my kid doesn't play number 2 to anybody. When they were talking about if he would go, where he would go in the draft with Caleb Williams being the number 1, and Deion said, my kid doesn't play number 2 to anybody. So he thinks his kid would be a number 1 pick. And the only way to do that is to go back again and then be the top quarterback because the kid is incredible at the quarterback position. Now, going back, 2 things. One, you're right. His estimated NIL is $4.6 million as opposed to the $30-some million guaranteed he'd get at that position. And number 2, he's getting the snot beat out of him this year, and I'd expect to get the snot still beat out of him next year. It's not like they're going to magically find 5 guys that are going to be unbelievable in protection. So you fear the injury thing as well. But I think with that family, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, Deion Sanders is the best there was as a lockdown corner. He is a winner, and he will tell you he has always been a winner, and he's raised his kid to be that way. And I think he and I think his kid want to be the number 1 pick in the draft. And the only way to do that is to come back next year. I think he's absolutely coming back next year.
It's going to be fascinating. I just wonder when he says, when we love and appreciate where we are. You make a great point. I don't know if Shedeur Sanders appreciates getting hit all the time. That doesn't
the
look like
ice baths he's taking.
Fun time for him. It's like, Dad, no, I appreciate where we are, but we're going to need to talk about a little added security going into next season. Jesse, let's get to that. This one, peak nostalgia for you and I, especially yesterday, with a little bit of confusion here. What went on around the Mean Girls musical, but we're not really sure musical that got teased?
It's the Mean Girls musical movie. So the trailer dropped for this film that is going to be released. And what you're speaking to, the confusion, is that there's actually none of the musical parts in the trailer. And people are confused. I don't think this is confusing at all. They're marketing this. They don't want people to know that it's a musical. I think, like, if you know it's a musical, you're going to watch it because you love musicals. But they're trying to rein in the people who might be turned off by the fact that it's a musical. And it's working because I don't like musicals, but I want to see this movie.
So the trailer is just, it basically looks like a movie, right?
Yeah, I don't like musicals.
Well, It looks like a movie, but they also show some of the very clearly choreographed song and dance numbers that would exist. This is a reprisal of, like Jesse mentioned, the 2018 to 2020 Broadway show that ran for this. And Renee Rapp, who is the star of Sex Lives of College Girls and played the role of Regina George on Broadway, is going to be playing it in here. Now, you still got Tina Fey and Tim Meadows in this one, who amazingly enough are still teaching at that high school after all these years.
Yes.
And
they have tenure, Mike.
I love musicals. Like, I was a big Glee fan growing up. I love shows on Broadway. And so I am excited for the musical element of this. And I guess that's why I'm a little taken aback that you wouldn't let that little light of yours shine in the preview.
Well, I'm just saying there's people who don't like musicals. So if you release a trailer that will pull in people without showing that portion of it, why not? Then you're just getting more people to watch.
Jesse, you're 1,000% correct. This is a marketing move that says we want to get the entire mass and not cut it down for those that don't like musicals. So let's let them believe it's not a musical when they go watch this, and then hopefully be pleasantly surprised. Because I don't mind a musical at all. I'll go watch it. But to your point, Jesse, I do agree with you.
I don't seek it out, but I will say.
But Jesse, would you think?
Go ahead.
Would you think people would be enthused about just a shot-for-shot remake of the original movie without the original cast? Because without the musical song and dance element, that's all you're getting would be a watered-down version of one of my favorite movies ever.
I mean, I don't know. Remakes are all the rage these days. They remake everything. Like, it's kind of like, okay, we'll get a fresh take on it and see what comes of it. Tina Fey's involved, so it's going to be good.
Yeah, I do like that. And Mike, remakes are hit and miss, right? Your remake The Longest Yard, I didn't really dig that. Your remake Walking Tall with The Rock, I kind of dug that. So, it is kind of, for the most part, I'm not usually a huge fan of them. But it's an interesting point you bring up. If you give that added element of a musical, maybe that lures people. But I still lean more toward Jesse, thinking that you may cut off some of the people that said, I don't want to go see a musical.
I will say the internet is melting down because the tagline in the trailer is, "This isn't your mother's Mean Girls." And everyone's like, oh, yeah. And I was like, we're not old enough for that. And then I was like, oh, no, I am a mom. I was like, I am a mom.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
no,
okay.
About to be a two-time mom. Yeah.
It actually is your mother's
It actually fits,
girl.
doesn't it? Yeah. Tough call, yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
It hurts.
Now I know.
Wait till you guys
I know
get to
Ben
me,
Affleck
okay?
looks like that in public every day now. It sinks in more and more every day. Speaking of seasonal depression here, Jesse, let's get to the third here and how Josh McDaniels had to ruin his kid's Halloween.
So first he ruined the Raiders, then he ruined his kid's Halloween. So apparently, here's what happens. He gets fired by the Raiders, calls his kids home from trick-or-treating to bring them home into his house to tell him that he got fired. So he was like, all right, you guys got to come home. We have to have like a family meeting. And it's Halloween. Kids come running into the house. I don't know how old his kids are. I'm imagining little kids come running into the house. And he's like, all right, Daddy's been fired and we're moving. Like, that's what I'm imagining happened.
So on this, there's part of me that says, why would you do that? And then there's part of me that can understand that, because now if you're going to these houses now, even if the kids have, costumes on, and you don't recognize them.
It's Halloween.
But maybe the mom is walking with them, and everybody I'm sure knows who the mom is. So maybe he was trying to protect them from going up to, hey, trick or treat. Oh, hey, your dad just got canned. What do you think of that? And because people can be idiots like that. So I don't know the reason. I'm just trying to think of why he would. But, he failed at head coaching the Raiders, so maybe he failed at the callback of the kids from trick-or-treating, because that cost those kids a lot of candy.
Yeah,
and you know what? Kids will remember that. That's the only reason, Mike, that I can think of on why he would do that, in case his kids started getting barraged a little bit.
Everything that's coming out about him, I feel like it was just because he wanted to call them home and tell them he got fired.
I mean, maybe his kids were going out dressed as Josh McDaniels and Devontae Adams for Halloween, and so it was going to be pretty uncomfortable if they kept this thing moving here. Uncomfortable is a great way to describe how I felt this entire show, because of all of the meat lodged inside my body. I'm going to go try and take care of that. If you also have enjoyed some meat sweats during this pod, download, subscribe, rate, and review. We'll talk to you tomorrow. later.